On the 14th of June 2017, a fire broke out in the 24-story Grenfell Tower block of flats in North Kensington, West London, at 0:54 British Summer Time. It caused 72 deaths, including those of 2 victims who later died in hospital. More than 70 others were injured and 223 people escaped. It was the deadliest structural fire in the United Kingdom since the 1988 Piper Alpha disaster and the worst UK residential fire since the Second World War. The fire was started by a malfunctioning fridge freezer on the 4th floor. It spread rapidly up the building's exterior, bringing fire and smoke to all the residential floors. This was due to the building's cladding, the external insulation and the air gap between which enabled the stack effect. The fire burned for about 60 hours before finally being extinguished. More than 250 London Fire Brigade firefighters and 70 fire engines were involved from stations across London in efforts to control the fire and rescue residents. More than 100 London ambulance service crews on at least 20 ambulances attended, joined by specialist paramedics from the Ambulance Services Hazardous Area Response Team. The Metropolitan Police and London's Air Ambulance also assisted the rescue effort. The Grenfell Tower inquiry began on the 14th of September 2017 to investigate the causes of the fire and other related issues. Findings from the first report of the inquiry were released in October 2019 and addressed the events of the night. It affirmed that the building's exterior did not comply with regulations and was the central reason why the fire spread, and that the fire service were too late in advising residents to evacuate. A second phase to investigate the broader causes began on the 3rd anniversary in 2020. As of June 2020, the fire is currently being investigated by the police, a public inquiry, and coroner's inquests. Among the issues being investigated are the management of the building by the Kensington and Chelsea London Borough Council and Kensington and Chelsea TMO and the responses of the fire brigade, the council and other government agencies. In the aftermath of the fire, the council's leader, deputy leader and chief executive resigned, and the council took direct control of council housing from the KCTMO. The national government commissioned an independent review of building regulations and fire safety, which published a report in May 2018. Across the UK and in some other countries, local governments have investigated other tower blocks to find others that have similar cladding. Efforts to replace the cladding on these buildings are ongoing. Grenfell Tower was part of the Lancaster West Estate, a council housing complex in North Kensington. The 24-story tower block was designed in 1967 in the brutalist style of the era by Clifford Werden and Associates, and the Kensington and Chelsea London Borough Council approved its construction in 1970. The building was constructed by contractors A. A. Symes of Leighton from 1972 to 74. The 220-foot 10-inch tall building contained 121 and 2-bedroom flats. The upper 20 of 24 stories were residential floors, with each having a communal lobby and 6 dwellings, with 10 bedrooms between them. The lower 4 stories were originally used for non-residential purposes. Later, 2 lower floors were converted to residential use, bringing the total to 129 apartments, housing up to 600 people. The original lead architect for the building, Nigel Whitbread, said in 2016 that the tower had been designed with attention to strength following the 1968 Ronan Point disaster and, from what I can see, could last another 100 years. Like many other tower blocks in the UK, Grenfell Tower was designed to be operated under a stay-put policy in the event of fire. The idea was that if a fire broke out in one flat, thick walls and fire doors would contain the fire long enough for the fire service to bring it under control. Only those in the affected dwelling would be expected to evacuate. The building was designed under the assumption that a full evacuation would never be necessary. There was no centrally activated fire alarm and only a single central staircase. Unlike in many other countries, UK regulations do not require a second. In 2010, a fire broke out in a lobby and was quickly extinguished. Until 1996, Kensington and Chelsea London Borough Council managed its council housing directly. In 1996, the council created Kensington and Chelsea TMO, a tenant management organisation which would manage its council housing stock. KCTMO had a board comprising 8 residents, 4 council-appointed members and 3 independent members. The tower was built as council housing, but 14 of the flats had been bought under the right to buy policy. These were occupied by leaseholders, or were privately rented out by them on the open market. Grenfell Tower underwent a major renovation, announced in 2012 and conducted over 2015-16. The tower received new windows, a water-based heating system,